The meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee meeting for January 27th, 2025, and I call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. If there are no changes or additions, we can proceed. All right, seeing none, we will move to approval of the January 13th, 2025 meeting minutes. Were there any changes or additions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Now we're on to employee recognition. We have Metro Transit General Manager Canderas.
Hey. Chair Barber, council members, thank you. And for this month's awarding accomplishment recognition, we're recognizing a few standout employees within our rail department. 2, Brian and Jaime from our rail vehicle maintenance team, and 1, Vladimir from our rail systems maintenance team. All 3 individuals are being recognized for exemplary efforts in their roles. Brian and Jaime are being recognized for taking on a mentorship role with new employees and their continued efforts to create a great workplace. And Vladimir is being recognized for his quick action during a communications outage in the Lindbergh Tunnel. Unfortunately, one of the individuals is not able to be here today, so we'll recognize him in a different way. But we're very happy to be able to highlight Brian and Jaime's efforts here today. And to tell us a bit more about their work is training supervisor Ben Engen.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager Canderas, council members. First off, we have Brian Burville seated here, and he's been one of the primary mechanics helping our new hire mechanics through job shadowing and on-the-job training for years now. He's detailed, accurate with the information he passes along, with a strong emphasis in safety and helping our new employees fit into the culture. Brian also checks all of our boxes for our 3 main strategic initiative priorities with Transit Forward. With our employees, he directly affects our new employees' positive experiences and safety while treating everyone equitably. This directly affects our employee retention. For the experience, his quality mentoring and meticulous attention to detail transfers to passenger safety, both directly through his work and indirectly through the work of those that he mentors. And service. Brian's mentoring also increases our service reliability, both directly and indirectly, through his own work and the work of those that he mentors. Then moving along to Jaime Galindo, also seated here, and he's been filling much of those same roles. He's been the primary helper in that mentorship. And he does the same thing, job shadowing, job training, and he is detailed and accurate with that information that he passes along. Also, strong emphasis in safety and helping those new employees fit in on the job. As far as those Metro Transit Forward boxes, he also checks those. Employees, he's doing the same thing as Brian does with those positive experiences and safety and treating all people equitably. Also directly affecting the retention in the helper ranks. For experience, his quality mentoring, meticulous attention to detail helps with our passenger safety and our vehicle cleanliness that happens out on the line, both directly through his work and indirectly through the work of those that he mentors. He's also doing the same thing with service. He helps those service reliability by quickly addressing trains that are pulled from service for our biohazards and various other cleanliness issues. The quick turnaround assures minimal service interruption and availability of our light rail vehicle spares. He helps both directly through his work and indirectly with those that he mentors. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sure what you do really helps us keep it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations. Thanks. Thank you for joining us today, and congratulations. All right, now we are on to reports, and our first one is MTS Executive Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, council members. Just one real brief update tonight. We are continuing to get good reviews and positive feedback on our new microservice. That's a partnership with Metro Transit, but delivered as a contracted service. Rave reviews from customers as they're beginning to discover the service and take it, and finding that it can significantly reduce their commute time and make connecting to transit, even outside of, to go beyond the zones, seamless and efficient. So excited for that, and excited for it to continue as we open the Gold Line and move forward, and we'll be reporting as we get more experience under our belt on how it's going in terms of the operating statistics and ridership. But happy to be a few weeks in with smooth service and short waits and positive reviews.
Very good news. Questions, comments? Councilmember Vento.
Thank you. You made my day.
We like when that happens. All right, if there's no other questions, then we will turn to Metro Transit General Manager Canderas.
Chair Barber, council members. Well, I want to just first belatedly say happy 2025. I was not able to be at your last Transportation Committee meeting. It was my final day of CDL training along with some of our newest bus operators. So I couldn't make it to this meeting, but I also wanted to thank Deputy General Manager COO Brian Funk for covering for me. He provided a very thorough update. And I just want to echo one thing he raised last time, which is recognizing the tremendous work of our employees during the cold weather we've been experiencing this month. We ask a lot of our employees every day, and certainly a lot of that work becomes tougher when it's this cold. And we also ask them to be extra vigilant, looking out for riders who may need a safe and warm place to be. So just wanted to echo the recognition that Brian shared last time, and add my own thanks to that as well. And offer to council members too, if you are receiving questions or have questions yourself about our cold weather protocol, some of the extra steps we take when we are experiencing these extreme temperatures, we're always happy to answer questions about that. So with that, I don't have any further reports, but happy to take any questions.
Very good. Questions or comments? I'll say kudos on going through CDL training. Good job. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll turn to our tab report, and we have Member Dugan here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, honorable committee members, Executive Director Carlson, and of course, General Manager Canderas, and Jenna, who keeps me on my toes, makes this easy for me. In regard to what the tab has done, at our last meeting, I'll summarize December and January. In January, we not elected, but appointed new executive committee members. That's a change annually, and new technical advisory committee members, again, a change annually. The two items that were of most importance were the consideration and adoption of the Imagine 2025 Transportation Policy Plan, and I believe Cole Hineker is here today to address that with you. And then Katie Roth and Kyle O'Donnell Burrows will bring you up to date on the Nequit Mall transportation update. It was really a fascinating update. It was very well done. In terms of the regional solicitation, in December, the policy work group met in a open workshop next door, and members of the Met Council Transportation Committee were there. TAB members, agency folks, and other stakeholders. And the analysis is it going to be a goals outcome revamp or a modal? And modal is what we currently do now, streets, highways, buses, that by mode. as opposed to an outcome. And then next week, which would be an important meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee is meeting to have input on the regional solicitation evaluation, and their information input will be very important. As part of that regional solicitation evaluation, the Met Council staff did a peer evaluation of several like MPOs throughout the country. And one of their conclusions was there seems to be a balance between quantitative, which would be modes, and qualitative, which would be what do you want for an outcome. They chose these cities because they, like Minneapolis or the Metro, they were balancing urban and rural needs, equity considerations, regional planning goals, and fund distribution. Some of the cities or the MPOs that they interviewed were Denver, which has a dual model, both, a modal and quantitative approach. Seattle, Puget Sound has set-aside programs, particularly for equity in rural areas. Atlanta has a three-step evaluation process for its projects. And Columbus and Mid-Ohio and Kansas City, Mid-America are very similar to ours. One of the important information items that came up was a gentleman who's in charge of Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis Vision Zero, came and did a presentation. In the interest of brevity, I'll bring that up next month. But the Minneapolis Vision Zero is 0 traffic deaths and severe injuries by 2027. In terms of safety, which is going to become a paramount consideration of the TAB, as Chair Barber knows, I thought you'd be interested in some Minnesota crash data that was compiled by MnDOT. In January, I'm going to go back between January 2025, okay, so the months to date, and all of 2024. Total crashes in our round. In January was 4,000. In 2024 was 63,000. Injuries with crashes were about 900, and in 2024 about 17,000. The total injuries from all these crashes was about 1,200 in 2025 and 23,000 in 24. The fatalities thus far this year have been 14, with a total, there have been 14 fatal crashes and 16 people have died as a result of that. In 2024, we had 445 deaths with 445 fatal crashes with 492 deaths. Commercial vehicle property damage was about 3,200, and then in all of 2024 was 46,000. And one of the most concerning stats is crashes in work zones, which we know how dangerous those are. So far, there have been 33 crashes in a work zone, and last year there were 2,300. The lowest months of February and April, and the highest months are November, December, and January. Okay, and if I may, conclude. First of all, with this, I want to compliment General Manager Kinderas and Chair Barber. I was a member of an organization that had a speech or a presentation by the Metro Transit Police Department, Captain Ahmed, Captain Raymond, and then Interim Chief Dotches. And it was very impressive, very impressive. Many people wanted to volunteer. And what they're doing is just, I can say, very impressive. And I also, I know Sue, Commissioner Vento, but on a personal basis, because of a medical situation, my granddaughter has to be living with us temporarily. And because of the Vento Act, the ISD 196 made arrangements to come and pick her up personally and take her to school. And you're going, holy mackerel, this is... And you may not recall, but last month, one of a gentleman who addressed the panel made a quick reference to Victor Gruen and about, and he didn't follow up on it, but if I may have a minute, Victor Gruen was a German-Jewish architect and a socialist, and that becomes very important. He grew up in Vienna and escaped prior to the Holocaust. He came to the United States with a degree, $8 and no English. He is most known for creating the first enclosed mall in the United States because of air conditioning, and that's the Southdale Mall. That was the first one. He went on to design about 50 malls. And he designed Southdale with the idea of it being a community, a full-fledged community, much like you're seeing now at Southdale with the Lifetime Fitness and the like. And he wanted it to emulate a European shopping experience, such as you see most all malls do today. You have a middle corridor and you have the storefronts right there, so you're just walking in. It also, when you drive there, it is a spiral, and he wanted that as a walkable area, and that's how it was designed. It was commercially successful, but the full-fledged community never came. Unfortunately for him, the reason I mentioned he was a socialist is because he very much believed in pedestrians, people, not business. And he designed the mall with the intention of it being a community to stop the spread of urban sprawl and individual cars to go shopping. And unfortunately and paradoxically, that's exactly what did not happen. And he died very disillusioned with that frame of reference. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very interesting. Questions and comments? All right, thanks, Peter. That's very interesting. So now we're on to business. Our first items are the items on consent. We have 2 items on consent tonight. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
Motion to approve?
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss, seconded by Councilmember Morales. Sorry, couldn't tell who said it. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Now we're on to our non-consent business. And we have Jim Harbert here to present multiple items. So business item 2025-31, 32, and 34. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber and committee members. Again, I'm Jim Harwood, Assistant Director of Engineering and Construction in Metro Transit Engineering and Facilities Department. I do have a few different business items today. First is business item 2025-31. This is for a lease contract for a property for our public facilities workers. The proposed action is that the council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 25M008 with North Point Development for the 10-year lease agreement in the amount of $14,344,453, which is inclusive of a tenant improvement allowance and also the annual common area maintenance expenses. So as everybody's aware, there is a lot of anticipated and planned growth coming, including this year and beyond in our metro system. And with all that growth comes growth in the people who need to, and vehicles and equipment to maintain all those platforms, the guideway, and that. So our public facilities maintenance team has been housed at 677 Transfer Road in St. Paul here for some time and have also been at capacity for some time. And as we know, those staff needs and vehicle and equipment needs will likely up to triple over the next 5 to 10 years to accommodate this growth. We've been working with the real estate office to find space to allow us to service the system as necessary. So in working with the real estate office, going through the program, we did center in on a facility at 345 Industrial Boulevard as one that very adequately meets the team's both current and future space needs and supports all those future service requirements. That happened after evaluating several properties, and it was determined that the lease terms are fair and reasonable and that this location is in the best interest of the council. There is funding available in our operating budget to make these annual lease payments. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Jim, I apologize for posing this question, but it's kind of with regard to number 1 and number 2 vaguely, and then, number 2 deals with furniture, but also just anytime we're dealing with remodeling or new facility, or taking down facilities and tearing apart, how closely are we watching exposure to possible toxins? I've been following the LA fires too much. I have a nephew who lives out there, and I've been a little frantic for him. He's not in those areas, but I'm concerned about the air quality, and I'm concerned about asbestos. And I always worry that whether I'm watching an HGTV show where they're remodeling an older home, or I see someone remodeling older buildings, that folks aren't aware of the risks. And I'm just wondering, when we have contractors come in, do they sign off that they're going to take care of all of the potential risks in a professional and ethical sort of way, and not expose their own workers or our workers?
Cheers. Chair Barber and then Councilmember Vento. So I'm going to answer that first, which relates to this business item, and then just kind of more kind of largely in terms of how we just do our work.
Yeah.
So that, there will be lease terms,
Yep.
and the building owner that we're leasing from will do the construction of this, and will ensure that our lease terms protect us and our employees.
Okay, good.
Going forward. As it relates to construction projects that we manage and that we contract, we have specifications. In our construction specifications, it talks about if things are encountered, what is the contractor supposed to do? Who do they notify? What are the actions that they take? So that's how we account for that. It's spelled out in specifications we've been using for years, and we're developed with legal and others.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much. I made the mistake of taking a little break from football yesterday and watching a little HGTV, and I was kind of freaking out in one of the shows because they were just going to work on this house, and God only knows what they pounded out. So thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
All right, additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-31.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Vento, second by Councilmember Morales. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back to you, Jim.
Okay, the next business item here is 2025-032. This is associated with a furniture purchase for our Haywood office remodel. The action here is that the council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 25P224 with Henriksen Incorporated via the Minnesota State contract in the amount of $2.5 million for all cubicle workspaces, conference room furniture throughout the 5-story Haywood office building associated with the remodel. So I think, as everybody is aware, we have been in construction over there now for several months, a complete remodel of the 5-story office tower, from lighting systems, mechanical systems, all the way down to the furniture and the fixtures and equipment. And as part of that, we do need to purchase new furniture associated with the rebuild. So we are utilizing Henriksen through the state contract to make that purchase. We have standardized our furniture with adjustable desks for all, ergonomic chairs for all, and really have designed the building to allow for a lot of flexibility in the future by adjusting furniture and not necessarily having to rebuild and tear down walls. So we are completing that construction floor by floor, starting with the 5th floor down, I should say by trade by floor. So we're doing that, and we are looking to purchase the furniture with 5 individual POs by floor to help expedite delivery and installation so that we can get our displaced staff back in there quicker. There are funds available in the project for this purchase. And with that, I guess I'd take any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Morales.
I just had one question. Who's going to be the subcontractor that's going to be doing all the actual work? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I think in prevailing wage language, the furniture is part of that too.
Chair Barber and Councilmember Morales, are you asking the installation of the furniture specifically? Who will be doing the build of the furniture?
Correct, because Henriksen is just a supplier, correct?
They, Chair Barber and Councilmember, I don't have that specific answer right now if installation is included through that state contract. That is something I'd have to get back to you on. They have, I know, they work directly with some installers, but I couldn't answer that right now, and I apologize for that in terms of if that's included in this 2.5 million.
All right, additional questions, comments? All right, seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-32.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Vento. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And back to you again.
Last business item I have before you today is 2024-034. This is for approval of updates to the adopted zero emissions bus transition plan. The action is that the council approve the updates to the adopted zero emission bus transition plan for submittal to the legislature by February 15, 2025, as required by state statute. So Jeremiah, a writer, and I were at the full council meeting for an informational item last week where we presented the highlights and updates to the transition plan, some key considerations. Excuse me. It kind of is a precursor to this business item here. As was mentioned at that time, the initial version of that plan was approved by the council in early 2022 and submitted to the legislature at that time. 3 guiding principles, as we talked about in that presentation, were developed that are still our guiding principles for that work, being technical viability, equity, environmental justice, and fiscal impact. That plan was submitted, and at that time, that next update was expected in 2027. However, under new state statute, we have updated that plan this year based on some new requirements, this past year, I should say, for submittal to the legislature by February 15th here in the next couple weeks. And that plan was updated in response to those new requirements. There are no specific funding impacts associated with the transition plan. Those funding are identified elsewhere in the CIP. And the plan does advance all 5 of the Thrive 2040 outcomes. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, can you remind us what those updates were that were required by statute?
Chair Barber and Councilmember Chambliss, I won't be able to go through all of them right here. There's quite a bit. There were 16 new distinct requirements that were put in the legislation, or the statute that we had to be responding to and addressing. And that's really what we based it on. It was an expanded scope from the previous version. So we addressed that based on what we have learned to date from our own experience with C-Line, what we've learned in working with the manufacturers of both buses and charging equipment, updated it based on our conversations with our peers and the published material that they have out there. There's a lot of detail. It's a couple 100-page plan, so I can't really walk through all the updates, but that's how, that was really what we addressed in the plan.
Additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-34.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Cutter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we're on to business item 2025-37, which is a Metro Transit bus battery purchase. And we have Jeremiah Ryder here.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber and committee members. I'm bringing forth business item 2025-37, and this is Metro Transit bus battery purchase using contract 24P271. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 24P271 with CMD Properties, Inc. to provide replacement batteries for diesel buses, the 1224 systems, and delivery to all the bus maintenance garages in the amount not to exceed $1,316,200 or $206. Excuse me. Some background on this is Metro Transit has 747 diesel buses and requires a new contract to provide 2 different types of batteries and the replacement and disposal of those batteries. The number of batteries per bus could either be 2 or 4, depending on the type of the bus. Price quotes were based off the estimated replacement and disposal of 866 batteries annually. The invitation for bids was advertised November 8th of 2024. A pre-bid meeting was hosted by council staff and outlined the solicitation requirements. The procurement facilitated a public bid opening on December 11th, 2024, and received 2 bids. The 2 bids ranged from $1,316,206 to $1,759,161 and 48 cents. CMD Properties, Inc. is the low responsive bidder and recommended for award. Annual estimates were calculated based on past use and anticipated fleet size. The rationale for bringing this forward is this is the execution of a goods and service contract exceeding $500,000. This does meet the Thrive outcomes of livability and prosperity by maintaining a fleet of vehicles that provide safe, reliable transportation. The funding from this comes through Metro Transit's authorized operating budget, and there is no DBE goal assigned to this as it's a commodity.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Carter?
Yeah, could you give us like a brief description, what differentiates the 2 different types of batteries?
Yep, so one's a older style lead acid, and then one's a AGM battery. So one's a much larger battery, and the second type is a smaller, kind of like your car, larger truck style battery.
All right, additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-37.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're on to business item 2025-3, a joint committee item. It's adoption of the Imagine 2050 Transportation Policy Plan and Public Comment Report. We have Cole Henniker.
Good afternoon, council members. This is obviously a big step and a long process. I've presented to you for, I think, 2 meetings recently, so we're not going to cover a whole lot in detail today because you got a lot of that through the previous discussions. Just a couple of updates on what happened since we last talked to you. We did make some tweaks to the red line versions that we shared with you all and with TAB in response to both some comments as well as some updated data that we had available with revised forecasts that came through the Imagine 2050 process. One of the comments was in response to a county concern that they had about some language that we tweaked, and they were all very happy with that. So we then presented the plan to TAB last week, 2 weeks ago, and that was approved for recommendation for you all today. There was one dissenting vote on that. It was not terribly surprising that we got one vote that was not supportive, but nothing that was terribly vocal at the meeting. I did want to talk a little bit about some of the next steps because obviously this is a continuous process, producing this plan and putting it into implementation. So we've already began working on the regional solicitation as Member Dugan spoke about. That's one of the first major steps of implementing the 2050 Transportation Policy Plan. We're beginning to work on system statements and guidance for local governments that are going to have to write their comprehensive plans in conformance and consistency with this. That's our next big piece. You'll probably hear more about that at the full council meeting. But that kickoff to that starts with system statement release in November of this year. And so we have to start hitting the ground running with implementing this plan because a lot of this stuff takes some time. And I also wanted to note that we are anticipating 2 amendments this year. You'll hear more about those later. But so there's already some things in motion to have to amend this plan, which is pretty common for the transportation policy plan. And then the final thing I just wanted to note is we have a big work program in the TPP. It's one of the chapters that's listed, and we've already began to start some of those studies A lot of them are things that we didn't know enough about to incorporate into this plan that we had to do some research on, and we'll come back and incorporate into future iterations of the plan. So a lot of work that this plan has already put into motion, but certainly one of the most important steps is to adopt it. So that's what we're asking for today. The motion that we're asking for is to both accept the public comment report, which was attached to the agenda, as well as to recommend the adoption of the plan for approval to the Metropolitan Council.
Thank
Happy
you.
to take any questions.
Thank you, Cole. Questions or comments? Well, I have some comments, so shocking. But because, as you know, I'm a little proud of this work. I think that I look at the work that has been done. I have to give kudos to Charles, kudos to Cole, kudos to Jed Hansen, a lot of the planning team. You know, when you look at how we approached doing this work, it was collaborative from the day one, working with a lot of stakeholders, and I think that's really reflected in the document. I really think it's kind of it really shows a good way for the council to do work, and that reflects the region, and I think the plan does that because of all of that kind of back and forth and being with community all along the way. So I think it's really, really well done, and I'm just really thankful to all the people who have worked on this. Like I said, all of these staff members, but also, you know, TAB, technical committees, local leaders, people of this group, the people of the TPP work group. This has really been kind of a very broad effort, and I think it's shown in it. So just want to really, really say thank you. So if there are no additional questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-3. JT?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales, second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
We'll
Thank
hold
you,
the
Cole.
party for the 12th, right? Thank you.
So that actually concludes our business for the evening. If no one objects, so the TPP will be rolled into a joint item with the other elements of Imagine 2025 to the full council. But then the only other item I think goes non-consent is the zero emissions bus plan, if there's no objections. So that actually concludes our business for the evening. I don't even like hearing myself talk. You don't want to do that. All right, with that, we can move on. So now we are on to our information item. We have Nicollet Mall Downtown Transit Update, and we have Kyle O'Donnell Burrows and Kathleen Mail here from the city of Minneapolis to present.
Good afternoon, Chair, council members. Thanks for having us here this evening. My name is Kyle O'Donnell Burrows. I'm here with my colleague Kathleen Mayell from the city of Minneapolis, and we are here to provide some updates on the Nicollet Mall and some downtown changes process that we've been working on together. We'll go over a couple of things here to start us off. So I will walk us through well, first, we'll turn it over to Kathleen to walk us through a little bit of the project background and the city's plans to fully pedestrianize Nicollet Mall, which would move buses off of the mall. I'll take us through a little bit of the context of Nicollet Mall today, as well as walk us through the three options that we've developed with the city of Minneapolis as alternatives to go through downtown to Nicollet Mall today. I'll turn it back over to Kathleen to talk a little bit about our engagement approach that we've been working on together. We've had a couple of engagement phases that were undertaken and are underway right now, and we'll have a little summary of that for you. And then I'll close us out here with some next steps. So first, turning over to Kathleen.
Thank you, Kyle. Good afternoon, all. I'm Kathleen Mayell from the city of Minneapolis. I'm a transportation planning manager in our Public Works Department, and I've been leading in the collaboration with Metro Transit on this project. So thanks for having us here today. So the city of Minneapolis is working to implement a vision to pedestrianize Nicollet Mall. A key component of that is finding a place for all the buses to go to. Full recognition of the importance of this transit corridor in the city and in the region. And so we have been partnering with Metro Transit to do that. The pedestrianization has been gaining momentum. I mean, idea that's been around for a long time, but I'd say this recent iteration has been gaining momentum over the last year and a half, and is being led by both city-led, planning works as well as outside initiated. We see this as an opportunity to also work toward improving transit downtown, which is a policy and a stated goal in the city. There are 4 recent plans that support this pedestrianization and vision of Nicollet Mall. Starting in 2023, the Mayor's Vibrant Downtown Storefronts Work Group report, followed in that year with the Minneapolis Foundation's Downtown Next plan. And then last fall, the City of Minneapolis released the Downtown Action Plan, which again highlighted as a cornerstone of the revitalization downtown is this pedestrianization of Nicollet Mall. And then the Minneapolis Downtown Council last November released their Downtown by Design Minneapolis 2035 plan, which also highlights and work in with plans to work toward this vision. The Transportation Action Plan, which is our 10-year guiding plan for transportation in Minneapolis, has a lot about transit. It is one of the core components of the plan, and there is a strategy within that document that highlights the need to increase speed and reliability of transit when focusing on downtown, and notably Marquette, Second, and Nicollet Mall. So this shows a page of that planning document, and so we see this as, again, an opportunity to do just that, and Kyle will talk about some of the different characteristics of transit on Nicollet Mall and what we anticipate with this planned move. This slide puts the different planning documents in context, notes when we began our conversations and partnership with Metro Transit. Last fall, we started more broad engagement with the public on this, introducing the different concepts of where transit may go to. And then starting last month and all the way through this month, we've been doing a lot more engagement, talking in more detail about the different options, the trade-offs, what this would mean, what this would look like in terms of transit travel time, sidewalks, shelters, all sorts of things. And we hope to identify a preferred transit corridor this spring, do another round of engagement, talking about that with the community, transit riders, downtown stakeholders, and so on. And then that would lead us into basically, another set of steps to make that preferred corridor become a reality. So that would turn into a project. And we would work with Metro Transit on that. We would formalize this arrangement or what would be happening to transit downtown through some sort of memorandum of understanding between the two agencies. And we'd be looking at 2026 as being the earliest implementation of transit off the mall. There'd be ongoing kind of parallel work happening on the pedestrianization of Nicollet Mall that is clearly related to this project. It's a little bit of a separate effort. What we're working on in partnership is really focused in on that transit location, experience, benefit, trade-offs, and where we can get for transit to go as opposed to Nicollet Mall. Oops, sorry. So pass it back to Kyle. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. So recentering us a little bit on some of the transit context on Nicollet Mall. This is a similar slide and some similar information from what we covered in August when we were last before the Transportation Committee. Of course, we all know that Nicollet Mall is one of the busiest transit corridors in the region. There are about 11,500 ons and offs on the corridor, so that includes people getting on and off the bus. And about 650 buses per day use that corridor, which is more than any other corridor in our region, in our transit system. It's also the current planned alignment for 2 Metro BRT lines, so the Metro F line, which would upgrade and partially replace the Route 10, and then the candidate corridor Nicollet BRT, which would potentially replace or upgrade the Route 18. However, so we know it's a really important corridor. It's also, as we also know, among the slowest and least reliable segments in our transit network. In fact, it is the slowest and least reliable segment in our transit network. And buses are frequently detoured today to accommodate planned events on Nicollet Mall. So this is, farmers market, holidays, all these types of things. And of course, given the attention on Nicollet Mall as part of the kind of downtown events hub, we anticipate that continuing into the future and growing into the future if we weren't in this situation here. So digging in a little bit, we know Nicollet Mall is served by 5 routes today, the 10, 11, 17, 18, and 25, and is, as I mentioned, the planned alignment for the F-line and future Nicollet BRT. On the nearby Mark II Express corridor, there are 33 express routes with service mostly in the morning and afternoon rush hours, some limited all-day service. And then Mark II corridor is also home to the Metro Orange line, which does provide frequent all-day service through all hours of the day and on weekends. So based on the city direction and the city moving forward with fully pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall, moving transit off of Nicollet Mall, Metro Transit and the city are working on alternative options for the primary north-south corridor for transit through downtown as an alternative to Nicollet Mall. That will result in buses moving off of the mall and potentially change or impact some of the express service on Mark II here as well. So I want to walk us through those 3 options. We've identified those 3 options as that primary alternative corridor to Nicollet Mall in collaboration with the city of Minneapolis. I'll reintroduce them to this group here and then walk through them in a little bit more detail in the following slides. Option 1 is sort of Marquette and 2nd Avenue as a one-way pair. And this option would move transit routes over to Marquette and 2nd Avenues, retaining the existing one-way pair operation that is out there today on how the Mark II corridor operates with transit southbound on Marquette and transit northbound on 2nd Avenue. Stops for local and BRT routes that would use this corridor would be added to the corridor, and the express stop routes would be reconfigured to fit those stops in. Option 2 is also using Marquette and 2nd Avenues, this time reconfiguring the operation a little bit. So local and BRT routes would use Marquette Avenue in both directions. So whereas today that operates as a one-way pair, here local routes would operate in both directions, northbound and southbound on Marquette Avenue. And then similarly, express service, which today operates in one way in each direction, would all move over to 2nd Avenue and operate in 2 directions on 2nd Avenue. This would be a pretty substantial reconfiguration to the operation on Mark II today, and we'll walk through that in a little bit more detail here in a moment. And then finally, option 3 on 3rd Avenue, operating in two ways on 3rd Avenue. This would move the local and BRT service over to 3rd Avenue from Nicollet Mall and leave the express corridor largely unchanged. So taking a closer look at option 1, this slide here shows us the planned cross-section, so about how much curb space we'll have and how the lanes between curbs would be used. As I mentioned before, like Mark II, this option would retain that same operation. So there would be 2 bus-only lanes in each direction, as there are today, allowing buses to board and alight passengers along the curb, and pass each other in that sort of outer bus-only lane without, fully out of car traffic. This option, like the other 2 options we'll cover here today, is anticipated to be faster and more reliable service than on Nicollet Mall for local and BRT routes, as well as being more consistent with no recurring event detours today. So helping to address some of the major issues that exist on Nicollet Mall today. Space would be available for comfortable sidewalks and bus shelters under these options, as it would, transit would board into light on the same side of the street as it operates today. So there is wide sidewalks there and space for standard style shelters. Transfer connections under this option are to east-west buses and to the light rail services, particularly for northbound riders using 2nd Avenue, would be less convenient with this option. 2nd Avenue obviously is a little bit farther away from Nicollet Mall and from 3rd Avenue, where those existing stations on the east-west services exist today. And obviously, rider destinations on Nicollet Mall are further under this option than they are from today. So there are a lot of important destinations directly on the mall. This option would move riders, 1 to 2 blocks away from those destinations. Most riders self-reported destinations when we ask them in the 2022 Tribal Behavior Inventory Survey remain within a quarter mile of stops under this option. Second option is, again, using Marquette and Seconds, this time under a 2-way configuration. So here, buses would operate, basically both streets would look similar to this. One street would be for express buses, one street would be for the local and BRT services. Each would operate in one bus-only lane on the right side of the road, and then use general purpose traffic to pass or to avoid obstructions in the bus-only lane when needed. We do anticipate this option being faster and more reliable and more consistent, like the other 2 options we've looked at as well. Under this option, express service is likely to be fairly considerably impacted because of the change to that operation, where we're only having one bus-only lane in each direction per street. You lose the ability for express buses and for local buses to pass without mixing with general purpose traffic. The existing sidewalks on 2nd Avenue on the non-transit side of the roads, that's the west side of the road, are also narrower than they are than the current transit side of the road today. So that would, without changing the curb, require narrower shelters than what exists on Marquette today. Those transfer connections are primarily maintained for local service, where Marquette Avenue is adjacent to the light rail station on Nicollet, between Nicollet and Marquette, and fairly close to Nicollet Mall, and potential for additional stations on 7th and 8th Street to maintain that connection. Rider destinations to Nicollet Mall, like the first option, are a little bit farther than they are today. Most of those self-reported destinations are within a quarter mile of stops on this option as well. The third option, 3rd Avenue, would use 3rd Avenue for the local and BRT services with a bus-only lane in each direction here. Notably, this would also include a 2-way cycle track, replacing the on-street paint and bollard protected bike lanes that are on 3rd Avenue today. Like the other 2 options, this one is anticipated to be faster and more reliable, as well as more consistent with no recurring event detours. There would be no change to express service under this option. Those transfer connections would be maintained because of the existing stations on 3rd Avenue for the light rail and for BRT and local service on 7th and 8th Street. A significant challenge with this option is narrow sidewalks and just kind of a narrow cross-section in general to try to fit all the things that need to be in this cross-section: bus-only lanes, left turn lanes, sidewalks, shelters, and that type of thing as well. So It's really a narrower experience and maybe potentially a less comfortable experience than some of the other options. Notably here, the distance is further than to Nicollet Mall than the other two options here today as well. And most riders' reported destinations are outside of a quarter mile of stops, planned stops on this corridor. And I'll turn it back to Kathleen to talk us through some of the engagement activities.
Thank you. We wanted to share what we've heard to date in our phase 1 engagement, which was late summer, early fall. We had an online survey and an in-paper survey. We collected over 1,700 responses to that survey. We had pop-ups on the mall where we were talking with folks. We were on the bus and at bus stops asking people their opinions of what was going on, including using the Great Day in Transit to connect with many transit riders. We had an open house at the Central Library and various other ways of connecting with riders and people downtown through promotions online, newsletters, City of Minneapolis news bites, and so on. Big picture, there was a mixed reaction from people in terms of what they thought about this project. Some people said, this is amazing, you should do it now, you should have done it a decade ago. Other people say, why are you talking about this? We shouldn't be doing this. I like things the way they are. And you can see here and I'll walk through what these 3 different things are, mixed support, really, and a lot of questions. What does this mean for transfers? What does this mean for travel time? And so that has really formed how we have also the questions we've dug into as we're progressing along on the technical evaluation as well, and things that we're sharing now in this current phase of engagement. So top right here, or on the right side of the slide, this is about 1,000 responses from the survey, a direct question, which option do you like best? The largest pie slice here is no change. That's a third of the people about. Over half chose either options 1, 2, or 3, but there was no real clear winner, if you will, in terms of what option was most preferred. The 2 charts in bottom in blue and green show as we coded the different comments that came in from the free response questions in the survey, if there were sentiments expressed about what preference people had between the 3 options or a preference for moving off the mall or not. And so again, a lot of variability in terms of public opinion at that stage of the engagement process about this project. These were the top themes of all the engagement from round 1. And so while I won't read these all verbatim, just highlighting, going through the top 9 themes we heard, distance to destinations was super important. People always talked about wanting to be at different destinations on Nicollet Mall. At the same time, there was excitement for the idea of pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall and what that would mean for downtown. People also, however, are familiar with Nicollet Mall, liked it, understood where to get their bus, wanted things to stay the same. There was the acknowledgement that bus riders bring vibrancy to Nicollet Mall. Those 12,000 on and off the bus on Nicollet Mall is a lot of activity. So there was concern raised about removing all that activity. There was the call to address negative activity on the mall regardless of what's happening with transit. And then there was also concern that the other corridors that we're looking at, did they have the same quality of places that exist on Nicollet Mall today? Lastly, people talked about that in order for Nicollet Mall to be successful, we needed more retail. So that was an important component. There was excitement for transit improvements downtown and the desire to want to see speed and reliability improvements throughout the downtown core, and a real call for us to improve safety regardless. On the trains, on transit, at bus stops, on the mall, just downtown generally. So that really, through all those, near 1,000 comments that we heard from, those are really the top themes from phase 1. So phase 2, what we've been doing since December is we have a different online survey. I'm not sure our latest stats, but last week we had over 1,500 responses already. We've been having direct meetings with business organizations, neighborhood organizations, downtown and surrounding downtown. We've had 2 open houses. One was an online virtual open house last week. That is posted on our website. We have our 3rd and final open house tomorrow at the IDS Crystal Court over lunchtime. We've been doing different pop-up events on the mall, and we've been on the buses Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, throughout January. Both staff from Metro Transit and the city have been out talking to bus riders, chatting with them on their travel path down Nicollet Mall, and so connecting with a lot of folks there, and then different advisory committees of both the city and the Metropolitan Council. So we have, or I'll pass it to you, sorry.
Last slide. So our anticipated next steps here, continuing to wrap up the remaining January engagement events. The survey closes on the 31st of January. We'll be still out on the mall and at Marquette and Second Corridors, wrapping those up. We anticipate a spring decision on a preferred option. So once we've had time to pull together the results of the engagement work that we've been doing and are completing here, review those together. We'll continue those conversations. And then coming back out, later this spring and the summer around engagement on a preferred option. So kind of a little bit of reporting back out and reporting on next steps. And then as Kathleen noted earlier in the slides, the earliest implementation of buses off of the mall would be in 2026. And then we would begin the initiation of a capital project on that preferred corridor. And at this point, timing on that is to be determined and something we're working out with the city of Minneapolis. So with that, I'll thank you, and we'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Lots of questions. I have some too. Councilmember Chambliss, and then Carter and Bento.
Okay, I do have lots of questions or comments. The first is, with so much mixed support responses from the engagement, I'm surprised that one of the alternatives is not to keep buses on Nicollet Mall. Can you respond to that? And then secondly, I wanted to dig into how to get to vibrancy and what the correlation is between bus activity, safety, and speed. What does vibrancy look like? I know there's a report that's pretty extensive from the Minneapolis Foundation, and it talked about those different aspects. But it would be nice to see what the city and the businesses are thinking about, the correlation between removing the buses and how that's going to impact vibrancy. Has that been done someplace else, for example, or are there assumptions that removing those buses off of Nicollet Mall is going to create the vibrancy? Now, in the Minneapolis Foundation report, I did see a lot of strategic suggestions that may have a correlation, maybe they're not, but maybe trying to find out whether or not there is a correlation, because if we go through all these changes and we say, okay, we want to have more activities on Nicollet Mall and we want it to be inclusive, et cetera, what are we changing? Because I know that once Nicollet Mall got revamped, there were a lot of activities on the street where you could play games, there were musicians and things like that. So what are, digging deeper into what the issues are and what the concerns of that 1/3 of people who basically want the alternative of keeping it the same. And then, I'm sorry about having so much feedback, but also speed as one of the positive aspects, when what you want is to have people stop in along the corridor as they go. If you're flying through at a higher speed, then how are you stopping and engaging in those businesses and things like that? So it's a little confusing to me. And then my last question is there an online survey? Because I worked in downtown Minneapolis for many, many years, and still, it's a major hub. So a lot of people outside of the city of Minneapolis are visiting downtown Minneapolis and want to visit it, want to see it be more vibrant. But moving the buses as the solution, I want to know more about that. Why is removing the buses going to help it be more vibrant? I don't understand. It's not really in my face as a real solution.
Madam Chair, council members, I'll turn it over to my colleague Kathleen to address most of those questions, and I'll circle back on the speed and reliability piece.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Chambliss. Thank you for the questions. We've been getting them a lot, and I'll do my best to explain, right? So the foundational premise of this project is that the plan is to move transit off the mall, and there are different efforts within the city, partnerships led by our Community Planning and Economic Development Department, as well as our mayor's office, that are working more on that foundational premise of, that we are pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall, what the partnerships and activation look like. So the partnership that we have been working on has spent less time focusing on the why behind, why is it that moving buses will create this vibrancy? What is the plan? I can say that without being directly involved in that work, different land use strategies, economic development, business, the vacant storefront pieces that both were part of the feedback we heard from the public as well as part of the initial, Downtown Vibrant Storefronts report, right? So there are strategies that are more land use based or business development that are components of that I'm not super involved with and feel very confident in answering those. What I will say we're focused on is ensuring that if the plan is, as the plan is to move the transit off the mall, how do we make sure that we are providing transit that is as good or better for all the people that really rely on that transit along the mall? And so that has really been our focus. I know the city's been looking at different examples throughout the US and internationally and different elements of pedestrian malls and such. So in terms of, that's been, certainly a challenge because people want to talk about that, right? And the same thing that you asked and we heard from people, and we're really trying to focus in on what is it that people want to see. Are there things we can do with this project that can help with some of those trade-offs that people are talking about and make it, what are the opportunities that we can see? And so some of that will be what Kyle talks about in terms of the transit speed. And there is an online survey. You asked about that. So that is open through the end of the week. We have the ability to get that information to you. It's on our city website. And we are definitely hoping that people from people that ride the bus, people that come maybe just a couple times, you mentioned people who live outside of Minneapolis, so we have been doing our best to connect also through different employers downtown that they are distributing information about the different open houses as well as the survey through their employees as well to try to get a lot of different voices into and responding to the survey.
Will let Kyle answer and then go back to her.
Sure, council members. Just speaking specifically to the speed and reliability aspect of things, where we're talking about when we talk about the speed and reliability there, we're talking about the movement of the buses themselves, right? So folks would, even if they're getting off the bus downtown, which they would still be able to do to then access those destinations, and contribute to downtown vibrancy, as you're mentioning, I think. would still want buses to be faster and more reliable, really, in every case. And so that wouldn't remove the ability for people to get off the bus and visit downtown or to contribute to the downtown vibrancy.
Councilmember Chambliss?
Thank you, and that brings me to, I guess, my last question. The distance to and from destinations is going to be longer, and I do think in the report it talks about needing access to the skyways, and I know right now access to the skyways is highly restricted compared to what it used to be, so wondering what the plans are for that.
Madam Chair, council members, so access to the skyways in terms of the access point counts is something that we did look at when we're looking at each of these three options, because we know skyways are an important way for folks to get around. As far as access consistency, that's something I can turn over to Kathleen to speak to as well, or other city efforts on that.
Thank you for the question, Chair, committee member. I don't know exactly what the plan is. I think that what is important here is we're trying to reach toward a decision of which corridor transit will go to, and then there's a whole suite of other things like what you just mentioned in terms of how is this connected to the Skyway, and I get that it also helps inform the decision, right? And then there are also pieces where there's the feedback cycle of, people have talked about lighting, for example, on different streets, or sidewalk width, or ADA ramps, right? There's a suite of things that I believe will come through post, and then part of the decision, but also post-decision of which corridor or corridors this will, to move transit. And so, the process of designing a project and going through all the community engagement about a particular project and the different types of improvements that are needed will be a part of the the process post-decision of corridor as well.
All right, Councilmember Carter?
Yeah, my question was, out of the three options that you propose, which ones are projected to have the least negative impact on small business, and why?
Chair, council members, as part of Metro Transit's work on this, we haven't done anything to project impacts on small businesses, and I can turn it over to Kathleen to speak to anything that the city has done as far as that work goes.
Thank you, Councilmember Chair. We don't have, I don't have an exact answer for you in terms of the least impact of small businesses. I will say that what we are looking at related to business impacts at this level is ensuring that access, no matter what of the three options, access remains to the different parking ramps or garages. We're considering what the curbside impacts are, knowing that folks get deliveries and that is important to small businesses that don't have, say, loading docks, right, on any of these corridors. So it's more at the higher scale level right now in terms of what those impacts are trade-offs between the three options.
Okay, and I have one other question. There are a lot of downtown areas that are walking areas, and some have been around a long time, and some are more recent. So are there two or three that you focused on as kind of a model for what we were doing?
Thank you, Councilmember Chair. In terms of models for the pedestrian plaza you're talking about in particular, I don't know if there's a particular model that is being looked at as that's the best one. We want to go do everything the same, right? We have a cold winter climate. We have unique things with our skyways. We have, we've got the river and we have the Loring Greenway as key pieces to connect into. So I wouldn't say that there's, and again, I'm not super involved in the pedestrianization side of the conversation, but I have not heard, like, here's exactly the model we're trying to achieve. But know that people, know different bits and pieces of activation and things that we've done successfully here, the different pieces that Kyle was referring to in terms of when we have taken buses off the mall for different events. We've hosted the Super Bowl, we host Farmers Market, the Nicollet Exchange. Like, there's a lot of successes also that are already happening here in the ability to do those more frequently without disrupting and rerouting transit and whatnot as well. And all the kind of coordination and effort that goes into that with Metro Transit and the impacts on our riders is another just, part of that. But
Right, Councilmember Vento, then Pacheco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kyle and Kathleen. I just have to begin by making an observation. It's my belief that Nicollet Mall has an identity crisis, a pretty serious one. And I think it goes back to, in my opinion, the departure of Dayton's. It was downhill from there. And I don't know how you fix it, but I'm not convinced that this approach is the way to fix it. I'm concerned. We had an individual who came and gave a public comment several months ago about this project and expressed concern at a council meeting about the impact on folks with limited mobility as well as senior citizens, and how it was just going to be really difficult for them if transit was moved off of Nicollet Mall. And given that the fastest growing population in the metro area right now is senior citizens, I think that's a factor that really needs a lot of attention. The other concern I have is that there's no mention of what the cost would be for this or who would pay for the cost. And it's a little bit like going on a shopping spree without knowing what your budget is. So I don't know how either the city or the Met Council can go forward with any of this without having a better handle on what the costs are. And then finally, well, not finally, I apologize for that. I want to echo what Councilmember Carter said about the impact on small businesses. I think that's a very big concern. We've heard concerns when there have been major construction efforts in Hennepin, Lake Street, Lindell areas, and businesses struggle whenever folks can't easily and comfortably get to their locations and find a parking place. Not all people are able to take transit, given on where their starting point is and what the destination is. And finally, I just want to say a little bit about the struggle for those of us who don't regularly go to downtown Minneapolis, but when we do, it can sometimes be pretty traumatic. We've just gone through in both of our major cities, a pretty aggressive, and we're not through it here in St. Paul yet, a pretty aggressive road construction season. And there are days when I don't know if I should turn left or turn right and what's going to happen when I get to the end of a block and how far out of my way am I going to have to go to get pointed in the direction I want to go. And I really think we need to think about the disruption it causes and the impact it has on people's interest in going back to Minneapolis or going back to St. Paul. I have heard people talk about how they used to regularly go to the Orpheum or to the Guthrie, or to the Dakota, or other places in downtown Minneapolis, and they don't do it so much anymore. They're finding it increasingly difficult. I hear the same thing from people about going to downtown St. Paul. And I don't even try to convince folks anymore. I can't confidently say that I disagree with them. So I really hope we think about the long-term impact and the unintended consequences that I think are really there's a lot of potential there that those unforeseen consequences could have the impact you're not looking for. Some of my best childhood memories are taking the bus from a little town in southeastern Minnesota, taking the Jefferson bus to downtown Minneapolis, and spending a long weekend with my mom's sisters, who were single career working women here in the cities. They both lived in Minneapolis. And the highlights of those weekends were when we'd go downtown. Felt comfortable and safe. We had the best time. We went all over the place. I hope we can return to that. I just don't think this is a solution, and I don't think we can go forward without really getting real about the costs, both financially and in terms of those unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pacheco.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members. First of all, where does the construction or the plan begin? Is it 12th in Nicollet? Is it further up to 15th and then goes from 15th down to the post office, I'm assuming? Where does it begin?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, are you referring to the pedestrianization of the mall itself, or,
Well,
sorry to...
Yeah, yes, but I see, my office right in the corner of 9th and Nicollet. And we were moved off, so I was real happy because I'd get off and it was right there, Young Quinlan Building, right there. Now I'm on Hennepin, and even adding those, it says, on paper it looks like a block or 2 blocks, but it's actually pretty good distance, and there's just vacant buildings there and parking ramps. There's nothing going between there, and they shut off the Skyway on me too early. And so, anyway, so where does that begin?
Sure. So the pedestrianization of the mall, maybe I'll turn over to Kathleen to speak to, and then we can speak. But first, for each of the 3 options, on the north end, they begin at approximately Washington. It's on the north side of downtown. And the south end of the corridors, approximately 12th Street. There's some impact to, like on Marquette, just north between 12th and 13th, and Alice Greenville, basically.
I think we were coming down Hennepin and then going about, I think it was 12th. Maybe not. Maybe it was right by WCCO or whatever. It moved over down there, and so it's a different spot. It seems to me that we've studied this, or definitely the city has studied this for years, and they just finished remodeling all of Nicollet Mall and put a substantial amount of money into it. And the question that they bring to us is to move everything. Regardless, because they said there's no not keep it on Nicollet Mall. There's everything around it either side. And I think there's the question of the vibrancy is once you get off of Nicollet Mall heading east, it's more office space, there's less restaurants or bars, but then if you went to Hennepin. And I think that's a question. What makes a city vibrant is a lot of people. You got to have the critical mass that people feel safe. They see people walking around, and I think moving them off there it would make a little bit different. Again, I don't know how much all this, because they put a ton of money into redoing the mall already, and then to start again. And I think the other thing is here, and there's other comments. One on the engagement part. Half of those buildings, if not more of them, are being cleaned by Latinos, and I don't see any engagement that's in Spanish or that you've went into made them a priority. But they're there. I see them every day, and they take the bus. The other is that I think we're short-sighted on this here, in the sense that we have bookends almost. We have the downtown and the mayor at the mayor's meeting the other day, the Mayor Fry. Brought up what's been brought up for years as well, is that the repurposing of the post office. And so now you have the river, and then if you go this way, you have the huge influx of what they're going to do with the Kmart site. And that's right on Nicollet. I think, to get to your point, what would change if these two would make that near the rate. We're trying to make them this mall or this thing that be the answer to all the questions. And I think it's got to go beyond that. And that's our role, to look beyond 5-10 years from now. But because that post office should be gone. We don't need the bus traffic downtown, the truck traffic and all. But I don't know, historic designation may impact that. But then you have the river, like I said, coming up. And the Kmart site, they're hard at work over there now. I see it pass it quite often. Anyway, and I think that's it. I think the debate of whether all we're talking about is how we're going to design it. And let's be clear on what the goals were and what we're going to get out of that design. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's not that that's what they're waiting for us to say something else. And I think you'll get from the employees, you're only a couple of blocks off, but you'll see the difference in the time of days you go over there, like you have. But that's it.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? All right, Councilmember Vento.
Madam Chair, I just want to, on the point I raised about the cost, I think the next 2 to 3 to 4 years are going to be pretty turbulent. And I think the taxpayers are going to only take so much. I went grocery shopping today. I paid more for eggs than I've ever paid. I thought they were going to be much cheaper by the day. Sarcastic remark intended. But here we are. And I just hope we keep in mind that we're trying to serve the public. And the public are the taxpayers. And I hope we're sensitive to the fact that this is really a scary time. And I think we need to figure out, for all of these options, including keeping it where it is, what's the financial cost? What's the best investment? What's best for the future? And what's best for a ridership and those businesses, particularly the small businesses? But I just can't get out of my head the idea that this would be going forward in any meaningful sort of way without really getting a handle on what the financial implications are.
Right. Any other questions, comments? All right, so I've got a few. If you can tell, I think there's a lot of questions and concerns about all of this amongst council members, especially on this committee. On your project background slide, you say that it's a city policy for improved transit in downtown. I want to be very clear that moving the buses off of Nicollet was not initiated by improving transit in downtown. It was initiated by the city of Minneapolis for a different purpose. And I want to make sure that's very clear. I've had several phone calls from a lot of transit riders, and I'll get into some of those comments that, why are you doing this? And say, we're not doing this. We're responding and trying to work with the city to ensure that our transit riders and our ABRT system will work within whatever framework we build out in downtown Minneapolis. What I'm really hearing from some of the transit riders is concerns with accessibility, ease of transport, or transfers, access to community space and safety. General message is that they feel they're really being pushed to the side and not being fully heard, and that's concerning. And again, because they see Metro Transit as the one initiating this, which is not the case. Those comments are coming to several of us, probably reflected in some of the concerns you hear here. I think that I share Council Members Vento's concerns about the cost. So we did, and Councilmember Pacheco alluded to this, it was not that long ago that we redid Nicollet. And so when I look at this is not a Metro Transit cost, and we need to have clear roles and definitions of who is paying for what as we go through this process. I think you will continue to hear concern around this table unless that information is addressed. And I know it's broader than just this topic, but I just want to make sure people are really aware of that because, yes, we have more funding, but we also don't have all the funding. Like there's a lot going on and there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's our job to look out for our transit riders, and that is really our key job here, and we have to kind of stick to that. I think just as a side note, I really have concerns with some of the shifting over to Mark II. Mark II was designed as a commuter corridor. It was designed to bring in those commuter buses. Yes, right now at this particular point in time, we do not have high ridership on commuter buses, but this is almost operating on the assumption that we never will again. And I think that takes one group of people out of the access to downtown Minneapolis who might come back. And so that really makes me nervous. And then the question that I have, after lots of oratory, is what have the conversations been with suburban transit providers? Because they really use Mark II. And like I said, I know commuter's not back where it was, but I really feel like we're making an assumption it's never coming back. And I don't think that's completely true.
Madam Chair, thank you. I can answer that question. So we've been engaging with the suburban transit providers throughout this process. We've met with them several times to review these options, ask and answer questions. And so, we've asked that they share this opportunity to engage with their riders as well. And they will continue to be involved as a preferred option is selected and within that capital project, what are the implications? Obviously, it's a very important point of coordination between suburban providers, Metro Transit, and the city of Minneapolis.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions or comments? All right, well, I want to thank both of you, Kyle, Kathleen, for taking the time and listening and coming back multiple times. We really do actually appreciate it. I think in the end, we'll have a better result, more conversations that we have. So thank you for coming, even though we can be a tough crowd sometimes. I do appreciate it. All right, anything else this evening? All right, with that, we can be adjourned.